From 2008 to 2012, Devon Larratt was on an absolute rampage. He defeated Brzenk in 2008, claiming the super heavyweight #1 in the world title. He started crushing everyone in his path, including Michael Todd, Richard Lubkes, and many more. But in 2012, Devon went up against Tim Brezhnev and shockingly was within millimeters of losing. In this video, we will analyze one of Devon's closest calls in his career, his match against Tim Brezhnev in 2012. Before getting into the match itself, a little bit of a backstory needs to be explained. On paper, Devon would be the huge favorite going into this. Devon ended up defeating Tim Brezhnev just the year prior at Arm Wars, and he made it look pretty comfortable. He also defeated Richard Lubkes in that same event, and he didn't just defeat Richard, but he crushed him. And Richard is someone who has given a lot of trouble to Denis Saplinkov in the past, so on paper, Devon's hook should destroy Tim Brezhnev. However, what a lot of people did not know is that Devon had been having a huge amount of elbow trouble going into this match. This is right before Devon got his elbow surgeries, and he probably shouldn't have even taken the match because he was in a significant amount of pain. Regardless, Devon is just going to commit fully, put all that pressure onto his elbow, turn and burn, and hope that everything doesn't snap in half. And going into round 1 of this match, Tim gets a pretty convincing pin in a little bit over a second, so everybody knows that the match is on at this point. Tim does have to drag all the way to the back of the pad, and he's potentially right on the edge of the pad, and we can see here that in terms of the hand battle, Devon is able to pretty much force this match inside. However, Tim has enough rotational side pressure that even if the match does go into a hook, he can still pin Devon. He doesn't have to crack the wrist if he's going to want to have something in this match. And that is going to be a big problem for Devon going forward. And in round 2, we're already going to get into a little bit of controversy. We can see right there that Tim's elbow is debatably off the back of the pad. Now, this kind of depends on how you call elbow fouls. If you're in a very strict federation, if any part of the elbow comes off the pad at all, so maybe even right here, they would already be calling this a foul. And then in some other federations, the rule is more so along the lines of if any part of your elbow is touching any part of the pad, you're fine. So depending on which federation you're in, this could be called a foul or it might not be called a foul. In WAL, this probably wouldn't even be close to a foul, but in WAF, this would already have been a foul 10 minutes ago. The referee does call Tim for a foul in this match, but this has led to some controversy because it looks like Tim was probably about to get the win there. And in the restart of round 2, we see pretty much the exact same thing. Devon is able to turn the match into a hook, but he still doesn't have quite enough stopping pressure to avoid the rotational side pressure of Tim Brezhnev. And once again, this is called as a foul for Tim, but it's really, really close. You can see that Tim's elbow is touching the pad, but it's touching the back of the pad, it's touching the side of it, it's not on top of the pad. So historically, that call right there has been pretty controversial, but the score is now 1-1. Going into round 3, we're going to see Tim committing a little bit harder to an outside move instead of just trying to maintain pronation and then go sideways and somewhat of a dragging hook. He's actually going to roll all the way out into Devon's fingertips, fully committing to attack the wrist. And we can see that as soon as Devon feels that he's out of there, he's going to transition to an outside move of his own. And now we're going to go to straps. And the strap match is going to be very telling. Potentially this could be much better for Devon. A lot of times in the past, Devon has fared better inside of straps. But as we see here, this is actually just giving Tim even more access to his power, and he gets an even faster pin than in round 1. Once again, he's right there on the edge of the pad, but he's not called for an elbow foul, and this is a pretty easy win for Tim, and it's in Devon's power. You can see that Devon is able to force the match pretty far inside. He gets a pretty significant degree of wrist flexion, enough so that the match is in an arm-on-arm position. But Tim just has way too much rotational side pressure, and he gets the pin without that much of a problem. Super concerning signs for Devon Larratt at this point. He's really controlling where the match goes, but he still just doesn't have enough stopping power. He doesn't have enough elbow pressure in order to prevent Tim from rotating the match down to the pin pad. And Devon really doesn't have a secondary option. He's not going to be able to go outside against Tim in this match, so this is very scary if you're on Team Devon at this point. The match is now 2-1 going into round 4 inside of straps. This time Devon attempts to go outside for just a second. He realizes that's not going to happen, and then he switches back to an inside move. And the match is pretty much inside at this point. Devon doesn't have as much wrist flexion as he would like to have, but he does have a pretty solid contact point into Tim's arm. After the transition, Tim is going to rotate down toward the pin pad. He's unable to get the pin. He does one more slower attempt, and then he's going to do a bit more of an explosive attempt, and he is able to get the pin on this drive, but he's called for an elbow foul right as the pin occurs. Once again, this call has ended up being pretty controversial because probably some part of Tim's elbow is touching some part of the red pad, but his elbow is not necessarily over the red pad. These kinds of calls are also pretty difficult since the foul is occurring as the pin happens. And as this is the second foul in this round, the round is going to be given to Devon Larratt. So even though Devon has not had a pin, he's not even really close to a pin. The score is 2-2, and it's all tied up going into round 5. And you can see once again on the slow motion replay, it is a little bit difficult to tell if Tim's elbow is off before he gets a pin or not. This is a super close call and definitely a very difficult call to make, especially in a live setting without some kind of instant replay. Going into round 5, we see Tim with the same exact kind of hit again. Devon tries to go outside for a split second and it just doesn't work. Then he transitions to that inside move, but Tim has so much rotational side pressure, he's able to get the pin once again inside of straps in this kind of dragging hook lane. And at this point, Tim Brezhnev is one pin away from taking away the #1 spot in North America from Devon Larratt. But in round 6, everything begins to change. Devon Larratt lines up with his elbow at the very back of the pad, and Tim is going to commit super hard to an outside move here. And what happens right off the go is we see that Devon shoves forward as far as he can. And by doing this, he is able to increase the depth of his grip mid-round. And as Tim tries to roll out into Devon's fingertips, Devon follows him with his arm, and Tim's roll is nowhere near as effective. And then Tim tries to go sideways, potentially a little bit too early. He gets rolled into Devon's hook. Tim is also in a super extended position, so Tim is not going to have enough access to his side pressure here to finish the match, and he's also not going to be able to top roll Devon, so the match at this point should be all over. Devon has access to Tim's bicep. Even still, from this super awkward position, he still has a crazy amount of side pressure, and he's making the match as close as he possibly can, but Devon is going to squeeze, he's going to improve his position, and at this point, Devon has way more shoulder commitment, way more cup than Tim does, and he's able to get the pin, and this is the turning point of this match. Once again, this is the very first pin Devon has got in the entire match, but because of those super close elbow fouls, the score is tied 3-3, and whoever gets the next pin is going to win this super match. And as expected, once Devon wins one round, he's probably going to win the match. He is known as the endurance king for a reason, and in this final round, we see Tim try to roll out, but you can see that his elbow flexor is just totally gone at this point. He starts with it at less than a 90-degree angle, and as soon as he hits, his elbow flexor just gets ripped open as he drives backward. He is unable to crack Devon's wrist back. Devon now has access through his cup and through his supination to attacking Tim's pronator, to attacking his bicep. And from this position, you can see that Devon realizes it's all over. He starts to look at the crowd. We see Tim doing one last drive, trying to do something, but the battle of rotation is completely gone. Tim is way too stretched out, and this match is totally over. Devon rotates down toward the pin pad, and he ends up securing this victory. And Tim Brezhnev is not going to be #1 in North America on this day. But let me know what you guys think about this match. Do you think that all of the fouls called on Tim Brezhnev were justified? Or do you think that potentially Tim Brezhnev should have been considered the #1 guy in North America on this day?